Well, joining me today is a member of American hard rock band Grede White. Welcome to Rockposer.com, Mr. Michael Lardie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I'll start off by saying straight away what a fantastic new album Full Circle is. I've had it a couple of weeks now, played it to death, and I guess the easiest way to say it, it's almost a back to roots album.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty great amalgam of all the different kind of styles we do. I mean, in a song like Big Time, it's very much that dynamic kind of, what we kind of visiting that face the day kind of vibe in the verses, and then the chorus is big and anthemic. Never Let You Down, kind of one of our avenues of blues kind of shuffle thing we do. This Is the Life is a kind of heavy, almost kind of Step on You kind of thing. So I think it's kind of a good smattering of things that places we have been before. So your back to roots thing is pretty accurate, I believe.
So how did you get back to work with Michael again? That's obviously Michael Wagner. For those of you who don't realise, he's actually back, I guess, in the captain's chair for this.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Michael ran into Mark on one of the rock cruises, and just one of those things in conversation said, "Hey, we should do a record again." Mark went away and thought about it for a second, and go, "Yeah, that'd be kind of cool," And it was interesting how we had realized that the last record we did with Michael was 1983.
Wow. Yes.
So it was. As it is with doing every record, it's a timestamp of where you're at the moment, and it just worked out with his schedule, worked out with the band schedule, and obviously the band was way different sounding back then.
Yep.
People would probably liken it to kind of something in the Judas Priest kind of eighth note driven stuff that we did back then. And the band obviously developed a lot over the years, and it was a great experience with Michael. Michael just he recognized, understood what the band was, after 35 years, and just said, "Do what you do, and I'm going to make it sound the best that I possibly can." And I think it was a great result.
Well, I think the influences of him on the album are very noticeable. I say probably where that almost retro sound comes in on some of the tracks. Which, as a fan of the band, and yes, I've been a fan that long, it probably makes us feel both of us really old. It's nice, but I also enjoy the mixture. I mean, there are still elements taken over from obviously Elation, and obviously the blues stuff, as you say, which I suppose really sort of crept in round about sort of the Face the Day track. It's nice that you've still got that element within the album.
Yeah, I think that, you can try to be something that you're not, but it never seems to go across very well. And I think the people that have stayed with us for 30, 35 years, as far as our fans, they know who we are. And we have a feeling like we know or have a pretty good idea of what they want to hear. And I think what comes out of you as a songwriter is your style. And, I know with Mark and I, we have a very... recognizable sonic to our rollout of when we write a song. So I think as long as Mark, Gotti, and I are in the band, it's going to sound like Grede White.
Speaking of albums and rock fans, do you find that rock fans are still one of those groups of people who prefer an actual album rather than sort of cherry-picking singles off the likes of iTunes, etc.?
Yeah, that is interesting. I think our genre of music is still really immersed in the concept of holding in one's hand the physical product. Looking at the album as a collection of songs that make a statement for, where the band is at that moment. Obviously there's some newer fans that have been turned on maybe by their parents that might do a little cherry picking. But I think the core group of our fans is really about holding that album or holding that CD in their hands and, this is the new album.
I mean, the way that obviously technology has changed, as we know, Do you find that, personally, that streaming services are a good thing or a bad thing for the band?
I don't know if it's really a bad thing to have a vehicle to get your music out there,
Sure.
especially in this day and age when, record companies are not anywhere close to what they were before in terms of support for an artist. That's one of the things that I personally feel blessed about, having gone through the ranks at Capitol during that time.
Yeah.
That was probably the last 10-year period of record companies really believing in an artist and allowing them to develop, because we had the opportunity to put out, re-release Shot in the Dark, and then we had Once Bitten,
Yep.
and Twice Shy, and Hooked, and so on. And it gave us a chance to actually develop. They, had, reasonable expectations of what we would do at any given point in our career. And the push was always to, keep building, keep building, keep building. And I think about bands, classic artists, had they not had the opportunity to have developmental time, how many would not have seen.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
Bon Jovi, Bob Seger, John Mellencamp. I mean, the list, Bruce Springsteen, the list goes on and on and on. They had the chance and the care from the record company to actually, realize that this is an artist they believed in. So they worked on, increasing the visibility to the fans. And I guess that's really artist development. And I don't know that really exists, most certainly in the place that it did back in that time.
Sure. Because of that, is that why you're releasing this album on your own record label, which of course is Blues Tone Records, simply so because not that you don't find the support from record labels, but maybe just not the interest that there once was?
Well, I think everything has migrated so strongly toward the social media thing.
Yeah.
And, it's at a point where if you do it right, you can get the message out that you have new material out without requiring, a cast and crew of people from this area and that area to get you to radio, to get you to in-stores, to get your product in. It's really, if you find out about it on social media, it's as valid as it once was from long ago.
I guess so. It's like anything. It's good and yet it's bad at the same time. Obviously, you touched, when you were talking about Michael earlier, you touched on the cruise. Obviously, you guys are returning to Monster Rock Cruise yet again next year, obviously, but it's going on a different route, I believe, next year. I know my wife is twisting my arm heavily for us to go back on the cruise again, because we went 2 years ago, so I just missed seeing you guys, and I was pretty much pissed off, to say the least. So I can see me having to rob a bank within the next 6 months.
Yeah, here we're going to Jamaica, Matt.
That should be an interesting cruise.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Do you enjoy doing the cruises? The fact that you mingle with the fans so much, and there just seems to be an awful lot more sort of interactions. Probably too sterile a word. It's just the whole atmosphere, because everyone's at ease and whatever, and it just seems to be the band seem to just really, I guess, enjoy it more almost. If that is that fair to say?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why that is. I think because we've all gone through everything we've gone through and matured as human beings. Back in the day when we were, in our 20s and very competitive with one another, there was always that, our band's better than your band, we do many more shows, our record's cooler than yours. At this point, I think everybody is like, can you believe we're still doing this? How amazing is this? And I think because of that recognition of that, you're blessed to be able to still do it. I think in a way it puts you in a state of mind that says, we want to have the opportunity to thank our fans like we might not have been able to back in that time.
Gotcha. So
being up close and personal with the fans and the interaction that we have is a completely different thing that we had 30 years ago. And it's a lot of fun. One of my best, the best parts of it for me are when people tell you stories about, I saw you at this, gig in South Bend, Indiana in 1989 with Tesla. And, I brought my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife of 35 years, and it's just that whole thing that you had something to do with their life.
Yes.
You know, you're part of their canvas. You know, it's pretty amazing.
Speaking of fans, do you find that the age range has diversified somewhat? Are you seeing more younger fans now coming, maybe because their parents have dragged them along whether they like it or not, or because just simply that they've become fans of the band?
I think it's probably they may have come kicking and screaming, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. Hard to say, but one of the greatest things I saw over the last 7 years is an 8-year-old kid sitting on his grandpa's shoulders, singing the lyrics to "Rock Me" in the verse.
Fantastic!
And how cool is that? That music that you've created has spanned another generation and another generation. I mean, that is, you know, it's one of the greatest gifts for me as a musician and a songwriter to know that something you've created is lasting.
Well, I think it's also, I think, obviously, when we touched on earlier regarding, obviously, rock fans maybe preferring albums and stuff, I would also suggest that, you know, they're probably fans of other genres would probably lambast me for this, but I'll probably say they're probably the most loyal fans out there. That, you know, they don't follow a band for 5 minutes; they follow a band.
They follow a band. They know, you know, what year you recorded something, and they want to ask a question of what kind of guitar you used on this particular track. I mean, fans are really immersed in the music because it is such a part of their life, and they just have that connection with it. Whereas maybe today with some of the pop music that's out there, it's kind of, for lack of a better word, a little bit disposable. You know, it doesn't have that thing that grabs somebody and stays with them for their entire life. I mean, we're lucky that that's the case.
Are there any bands that you've not played with, say, with a festival or Monster Rock Cruise, that you think, do you know what, that's still a band I'd like to do either a double bill or a festival with?
Probably one of the few bands left that we haven't would be Aerosmith. You know, we haven't had the opportunity to work on any shows. You know, we've been on festivals that they've been another day or, you know, this or that, but we've never actually done a direct support to them. And, you know, obviously throughout the years you end up meeting, you know, so many people in the business, but it's just not worked out that we've ever had the opportunity to play with them. So for me, that would be a great joy.
Yeah, I was thinking back to I've seen you guys probably 3 or 4 times over the years. Thinking back to support bands, I mean, I was at both recording concerts back in the day in London. Obviously, when you supported Alice Cooper at Wembley Arena, though we didn't know that was being recorded at the time, and obviously, famously, the bootleg recording at the Marquee. I was there. Now, there's one question I wanted to ask you about that, simply purely on a personal basis, is that the date on that particular bootleg is down as the 16th of December. Now, my ticket, which I still have from back then, is down the 14th. Did you do 2 dates?
We did do 2 dates.
I'm glad you can remember, because I've been kicking myself for a long time thinking...
Yeah, we were actually there to do about a week and a half of press leading up to a tour we were supposed to do with the crew, if you remember.
Oh, yes. I absolutely remember that.
Yeah, and that was a time at right before New Year's Eve where Mr. Six decided, I don't want to work this holiday season. I'll do something and I'll get into... Yeah, we all know the story, but that was one of the things. We went over to London to do a lot of press for all of Europe, but it was primarily for England and all of the UK, based on the fact that we were going to do about 7-8 dates with Motley over there right after Christmas. And we did 2 dates, and we had the mobile truck, outside the gig, and I remember doing press all week and those 2 shows. So absolutely. Your ticket is correct.
Do you know what, that without embarrassing you, that is down in my top 10 of all time gigs. I can remember quite vividly being crushed against the front of that stage with Mr. Kendall dripping sweat profusely on top of me. And of course that original marquee had a occasion that it got to a point where the ceiling used to sweat. It was not the noisiest, but it was just, you know what, I miss that venue so much with all my heart. There were just so many great gigs there. I mean, you guys must have just loved it.
What a vibe as a performer to be on that stage thinking, you know, the Who, Hendrix, Zeppelin, Cream, I mean, in all forms, all these bands over all that time, you know, standing on those boards performing and going, oh my God, I'm part of that. You know, it's definitely one of those ones that makes the hair on your arm stand up.
Obviously, you guys are going to be out promoting Full Circle. Are you already thinking ahead to what you're going to do after this record? It's been obviously a few years since Elation came out. Are you going to sort of sit back and just see what kind of reaction? Because obviously, let's face it, most people do not release an album now purely on a financial basis because it's never going to happen. As we know, everything has changed. But you know, you're thinking, yeah, maybe, you know, we might release another couple of albums over the next sort of 4 or 5 years, or are you just going to wait and see what happens?
You know, it's hard to say. We've got a lot of stuff coming out this year along with the album is going to have a DVD making of.
Yeah, I've watched the footage of that, and I'll tell you what, that's really good. That's Michael's studio. Wow, that's a fascinating place.
Yeah, it's definitely if you're a gear slut, it's definitely a place that you love. No, we have a lot of stuff coming out. We got that. They got the record coming out, and we've also got a documentary / concert performance we did in 2015 that's finally being released from the Joint in Vegas. Cool. Through a company called Rock Fuel. Extreme has already released one. Twisted Sister has already released one. We're up next, and then after that is Skid Row. And it was a great thing because they did, you know, it's going to come in a 3-pack. It's going to be the concert. It's going to be a mixture of the two, but mostly concert with a little bit of documentary. And then there's going to be another one that's going to be about 2/3 to 3/5, you know, documentary, and then about 5 or 6 performance songs. So it's a pretty compelling story when you think about the history of this band and all that it's been through.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm just pleased that you guys are still going. I mean, there's some bands have fallen by the wayside, some bands have reformed and come back. But I mean, you guys have just stuck it through thick and thin.
Yeah, you know, I guess, you know, the belief in, you know, what it's like to actually, you know, stand on stage and make music with, you know, the people that you've been doing it for so long. There's just a sound that is made and a joy from creating that sound. So we just have the drive to keep doing, you know, what we're doing. As far as any new records after Full Circle, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be time, hopefully a little bit sooner than the space between Elation and Full Circle. You know, the business has changed so much. It used to be, you used to do a record and then you would go out on tour to promote the record, to push the sales of the record. Now the way it's flipped in a 180 configuration, you do a record to tell a story to help you get gigs.
Gotcha.
You know, it's completely flipped. So I think doing records for us on a personal level is really important because it keeps us from becoming stale and not thinking that we've turned into a greatest hits band, which there's nothing wrong with, but we're still driven to create new music. So we want to keep trying to do that. It's just, you know, we're going to keep doing it. And, you know, I guess we'll all know one day when it's time to say, you know, maybe we should take a step aside.
Well, Michael, it's been an absolute treat speaking to you today. Folks, the album is out on Friday, June the 2nd, on, as I said earlier, on Blues Tone Records. Do go and grab yourselves a copy. I'm speaking as a fan, so I guess I'm a little bit biased, but it is a fantastic album, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
Well, thank you guys so much.